Hey everyone, it's Alex and welcome to Altered Academy. In this video, we're going to be discussing the BRAVOS starter deck and giving you a complete breakdown of everything you need to know to pilot this deck successfully. The video is broken down into 3 separate sections. The first, we're going to be talking about each individual card so you have a good understanding of what these cards do and how they function. Secondly, the video will have a combo section. We're going to be talking about some of the combos that are available in this deck. There's actually not that many in this particular one. And then third, what we're going to be doing is a live gameplay example of me piloting this exact deck. So let's get started where it all begins, the cards themselves. Kojo and Buddha are a fantastic hero and companion combination. What I really like about them is how the power ebbs and flows on turns you have initiative and turns you don't. It's kind of like, Sigismund and Wingspan, where you have a token that's a 1/1/1 every single turn for Ortis. This here is the same stats through the course of the game, but every other turn is a 2/2/2, right? Very interesting from that perspective. And I think that it teaches really good macro play when you're playing Altered, because there's going to be turns where you feel weaker. There's going to be turns where you feel stronger. And I think it's important to understand that Buddha in and of itself can be targeted with, training grounds. It can be buffed, it can be boosted, it can represent a legitimate power in the expedition that it's in. And so I really do like this hero and its companion and how it plays, because I think it gets you thinking, and I like that in the starter decks. It gives you some macro considerations that aren't always present, especially in something like an Ortis deck where it's very Zeus centric and just kind of blitz. This here you kind of got to consider the turns you're weaker and how you're going to mitigate that lack of that hero ability, and on the turns where you're stronger, how you're going to double progress, because you want to take advantage of that extra power. I really like this hero. It's a lot of fun. And what else is fun is the Rat. Ratisker, I mean, listen, it comes out as a 1/1/1, which is great early in the game. You just want to apply a little bit of poke pressure as a 1-drop, and I think that's very useful. And it comes out as a 3/3/3 for 3 from the reserve. I mean, you're not going to necessarily complain about that. It's not the greatest stats, but its rare version does provide you with great stats. Going to a 4/4/4 for 3, definitely worth carrying, and you do have the 1 in the kit here. So I really do like this card. I love the idea of inexpensive cards being very valuable in Altered, because it gives you that like scouting and poke play mechanic that I think that is really unique in Altered and other games don't really have, right? You usually want to play on curve and like Magic and other stuff, but with this game, having small things to scout is super helpful, and I do like the Rat. I like how it's called Ratisker. It's more like a squirrel, isn't it? I don't know. I guess I'll let you guys decide in the comments. Then we have Isin, and Isin is pretty interesting in the standpoint of like, it obviously doesn't trade effectively into like a Ortis recruit token, right? Like, because like the token will always advance because it's a 1/1/1 and this is a 0/0/2. But generally speaking, this can be a surprise advancement as well. Like, you can play something like the Rat on one side and the Ortis player might, just put a little pressure there. Then you actually do progress against the token because of the double water. They progress as well, but you do. So it's kind of interesting how this card can be utilized. The boost is very helpful as well from reserve, especially if you're going to target something like the Atlas. It's an interesting card. Later in the game, I often find myself using it as mana, but honestly, it's a pretty decent look into the early game. But I mean, that 2 water can be a little awkward, particularly when you're kind of trying to pilot that early game a little bit, but you'll still find uses for it. Then the BRAVOS Tracer is a really interesting card. It's a 2/3/3 for 3. 2/3/3. I'm still getting used to reading out the stats, right? I'm not used to that third number there at the end. And it has fleeting, which means it goes on the board once and then it's just gone. So you get premium stats, but you can only use it once. And then the rare version is even more premium stats for the same cost. And once again, it has fleeting, so it disappears. The way I use BRAVOS Tracer is, quite frankly, as like a bit of a finisher, right? Like, it's a surprise, huge power play when like they're like, he only has 2 mana left. Can they really do anything? And then like they kind of play a soft play and you flip it with the BRAVOS Tracer and you double, kind of progress. That's what I like doing. I don't like leading with the BRAVOS Tracer because I think that feels bad and you kind of lose your hand advantage pretty quickly, and that can be tricky with BRAVOS. But when like they make a play and they kind of commit to an expedition and they think they've got it, and then you sneak out that BRAVOS Tracer and crush their dreams, that's what it's all about, and it makes it worth it, even though it has fleeting. Really like this card. It gives the aggressive flavor that BRAVOS has in this starter deck here. And although the constructed stuff does look very like, rampy, and it has other like kind of very aggressive plays, I do like what the BRAVOS Tracer brings to this particular deck. Then we have the BRAVOS Pathfinder, and It's really good for certain expeditions because you'll have the you'll have the mountains in the water and you'll want to target them very specifically. And for 2, you're adding 6 stats into those particular ones. Not great in forest, but I mean, listen, you often have the opportunity to utilize Bravos Pathfinder to maximize its effectiveness, right? And if you don't, if you're in a situation where like you're looking at the track and you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to get much use of this, then you man it. It's not a big deal. It's nothing fancy, but I find myself pretty impressed with its stat line here and there. I mean, listen, sometimes you just need to win some mountains and some waters, and that'll do exactly that. Other times, hey, you just need mana. I mean, I'm trying to hype up a card that's really kind of boring. And I mean, Haven Trainee isn't really that boring. It comes out as a 2-costed 3/1/1, which is pretty good. I like comparing this, like, I think Ortis is the most popular starter deck, and you put this into the token expedition, and you're almost guaranteed to progress on the forest. You're blocking their other ones, and maybe you steal the other kind of expedition with the rat. So I do like what Haven Trainee brings. I do think it feels kind of expensive for 4 cost out of the reserve, but hey, it's okay. I don't think it's a great card, but still, out of reserve for 4, it's fine. You don't love it, but you'll do it. It has decent stats as a 5/3/3 for 4, so you'll take it, I guess, if the need arises. And then you have the Haven Bouncer. This is the Sabotage here, which I really like a lot. This card does like a lot of double duty here. Very flexible. It does the Sabotage, which is very important. It kind of takes something out of their reserve. Super key strategy. And then it also gains a boost. It gains a boost from the reserve, which is super helpful, right? So not only do you have that Sabotage from hand, you got the additional power from reserve. And so as a 3-costed card, you're getting the 2/2/2 with Sabotage, then just 3 across the board from the reserve. I like this card, actually. I think it's pretty solid for the starter deck, and I don't know. I find a lot of use for it very often. Now, talking about stats, the Haven Warrior doesn't have the Sabotage, doesn't get the boost, but it has very good vanilla stats. A 4/2/4, when we talked about the Pathfinder, right, it's a little less expensive. It doesn't have the forest, though. And this one here has a little bit more of a focus on the forest and on the water, less so on the mountains. And then you have the rarer version, which is the same cost, slightly better statistics by basically bumping up the mountain to make it even across the board as a 3-costed 4/4/4. So I do like this a lot, and of course you do have the discard from reserve capability to boost the next character. I find myself not paying that price very often unless I'm targeting Atlas. I'd rather get the 3/4/4, like the 3-costed 4/4/4 out. I think that's really valuable, especially at the 3 cost and as the kind of probing play at that point of the game. But you do have the option to buff up your Atlas if you so desire. Then we have Sun Wukong. Now, Sun Wukong's really interesting, very good in the mountain, which obviously kind of like counteracts the weakness of the Haven Warriors mountain, and especially in the common version. But it's the rare version that I think a lot of people get caught up with here. It keeps going back and forth out of the reserve. You can keep playing it again, and that's cool. But the thing with Sun Wukong is that it has the problem of just being, sabotage, right? If your opponent has initiative, you can almost expect them to play an Ortis Spy or like any sabotage card that exists. Pretty much every starter deck has a sabotage card. And so as a result, Sun Wukong, you want to get them out right away to at least prevent that from happening if they don't happen to take it out on their turn with initiative. But other than that, he's one of the ways that this deck can maintain a bit of a hand presence, a reserve presence, because it doesn't have much card draw. It only has 1 card that does that. It's just aggressive. Like, it has a lot of fleeting cards and like the tracers and stuff like that, and they kind of just leave the board. They don't go to the reserve. So you might find yourself in top deck mode, and Sun Wukong helps mitigate that to some degree. And for 4 stats, he comes out, as a 4/6/4. That's pretty solid, and he loses fleeting. They'll have to deal with it. And if they don't, then you get to run up the points pretty damn effectively. Then we go to Kappa. Who doesn't love a little bit of Kappa? All the Twitch lovers out there. Kappa's been, maybe even like the Golden Kappa. I don't know. But what I will say is a 4-costed card, just straight up vanilla, 4/4/5. I could talk all excited about it, but it's just pretty vanilla. There's not much particular synergy in this deck here, but you'll take it. Just like you'll take Atlas. Now, I actually really like Atlas, and Atlas is the keyword gigantic. What this means is that for 5 power, he's essentially putting 6 stats across the board, because it's 3 across the board in each location. So both expeditions get the benefit of Atlas's power. This is important, as we'll talk about in some of the combos, because if you buff Atlas's strength, then that strength is added across all expeditions. And so if you're able to, discard a card from reserve and buff Atlas by 1, then it's 4/4/4 across all expeditions. If you have Buddha there in the companion expedition, it's 3 in one and 5 in another, because Atlas goes right across. He's obviously susceptible to removal, and you do have an answer for that, because removal can be a bit of a challenge for Atlas. And we have Dorothy Gale talking about removal. You got a little bit of removal here, and this is an out-of-faction rare from Ortis. And listen, it is a 5 cost at 3/2/2, which isn't all that impressive stat-wise, but you get to send a target character to reserve. So they play their big Shenlong or something. They're like, oh, I just slammed something down. You're like, nope, see ya. You know what I mean? Then that's pretty good. You need to control the board state sometimes, and Dorothy Gale does exactly that. And this is one of the few control tools that this deck has. It's not the only one. We do have a control tool, but Dorothy Gale is a little bit of that. And talking about Shenlong, here's Shenlong itself. It does have tough 1, which makes it more kind of expensive to target with skills and abilities, but it's a 6/6 9/9/9. It puts up power, and it's most certainly going to put enough pressure to move a location if it's not dealt with like a banishing gate or some form of actual control. Shenlong represents a massive power play for 6 energy. It doesn't go wide the way Atlas does, but it certainly goes tall. And if you're concerned about the safety of your Atlases and your Shenlongs, well, then you can play the Spindle, which will increase the toughness of your kind of characters on board by 2, which means that they cannot be targeted, or they can be targeted, but they become increasingly more expensive to target by 2 mana. And that helps, because if someone has a Banishing Gate and it's 4 mana, suddenly it's now 6, and that turn doesn't curve as nicely as it could have. So the Spindle helps protect your Atlases and your Shenlongs from getting taken out. And then this is a fantastic set. I like this a lot. Physical Training is fantastic. We have 2 different versions. We have the rare version, which draws a card, and then we have the standard version, which does not draw a card, but still gives a target character 3 boosts for 2. That means you can play Atlas on turn 7 for 5 mana, and then follow it up with a +3 boost to have 6 across the board, or 8 with the Buddha. That's pretty insane. So Physical Training is a core component of the way this deck plays and its combo potential. Then we have Intimidation. This card is really good into specific matchups, and we'll talk about it from the combo perspective, but return a target character or permanent to the hand of the player. Very useful against Ortis if they play something like their Ortis Carrier. You send it back. They basically just threw their turn, right? They played on turn 3. You intimidate it, and then you play your Rat, and it kind of mitigates some of the damage there. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a really good skill. Very good against like the daughter of Yggdrasil, who I think that represents a massive play for Muna. It's a great card. It's a fantastic card. But a lot of people, when I was playing some like earlier competitions, people were using this as mana constant. Like, man, that's such a good spell. Like, you really want that. It's really impactful. And don't sleep on Intimidation as we talk about some of the combos in the BRAVOS starter deck. Okay, so this particular starter deck is a little lighter on the combos, okay? But I do think it starts with Atlas. Atlas is fantastic. It has the gigantic text, which means it's present in each of the expeditions. So that 3 powers across all expeditions. So the Physical Training is huge, because basically for 2 additional energy, so turn 7, you play Atlas, and then you play Physical Training. Conversely, you can play Atlas the next turn from the reserve, and then play Physical Training from the reserve, and it costs 1 more, so you're still on curve provided you're manaing down to 8. And then of course the Physical Training costs 1 additional with the draw card, but 1 and draw card is worth it anyways. So this is one of the key combinations of this deck. Again, there's not that many combinations to be aware of, but this is one of the game winners. And it doesn't really just end there, because Atlas can also get buffed by Issen and Haven Warrior. They both have the next character you play this turn gains 1 boost, so you can discard Issen from the reserve, then you play the Atlas, it becomes 4/4/4. That's pretty good, right? I mean, that's across all the expeditions, so your 1 little drop here, which might have done something with its water, suddenly is providing 2 stats across both expeditions, well, 1 and 1, right? So that's pretty useful. And of course, Haven Warrior also does the same thing as the rare, although personally, I find myself actually playing out the Haven Warrior as a 3-costed 4/4/4. I feel like that's useful half the time, most of the time, if not all the time. But it does give you the option if you really want to go wide against your opponent with Atlas. But hey, It's up to you. I tend to play the Haven Warrior, but the option exists. Then we have the Dorothy Gale into Haven Bouncer. This is an 8-mana combo here, and basically what you can do is just send a target character to reserve, and then you can just sabotage it. And you might want to do that with some characters that you're like, man, that's kind of big, and I don't want it to come back out. Like they have a Shenlong, for instance, or whatever it happens to be. I'm just using Shenlong as an example of like something large, right? And you basically just, okay, go to reserve, also bounce, right? So pretty good, right? And this is a bit of an eight costed combo here that can be effective if you're looking to disrupt your opponent's board state. And then we have the Sun Wukong into the Sun Wukong, and this is one of the key combinations as well. And it doesn't look like a combo, but the idea here is that this here, the standard card, it doesn't do the back and forth from reserve. It's not necessarily a combo, but it's kind of like a one-card combo where you can kind of, if they don't have that ability to sabotage the Sun Wukong, or if you have initiative with Buddha, then suddenly you're in a position where like it feels like free real estate where you get to just keep playing them out, right? And as that's happening, you're often building a hand, which is super helpful for Bravos, because like suddenly you're like, oh man, I got 2 tracers in my hand. Sun Wukong's on the board, and you can put tons of stats out for 4 power, tracer, maybe you win the game, right? So I do like what Sun Wukong does. He is vulnerable to like, or to spies and stuff that can kind of discard or sabotage, but ultimately it's like a 1-card combo machine. But his stats are a little awkward, right? 2/4/2, 4/6/4 when he comes out because of the boost. But honestly, he's still a damn good card and worth considering, especially if you find yourself in top deck mode, but you have Sun Wukong. And then the last thing we're going to talk about here in the combo section before we move on to the live gameplay is, I think Intimidation has a lot of really good targets, and I'm focusing in on the starter deck experience right now. Obviously, Intimidation has way more targets across the full set, but I do think that like Ortis Carrier represents a really good play. You kind of push it out of there, and you usually want to do that on the turn it's played, because like if you don't, then then essentially they get the token anyway, and it resets at the next turn regardless. But I do think that the Ortis Carrier is a pretty good disruption piece there. Yongsu in Muna is a very good target. If they have multiple plants and it comes out, it's massive. It comes out as a 3/5. Like, that's huge, and there's so much anchoring in that deck that it can be very easy for those plants to stick onto the board, letting Yongsu come out massive, and then you just intimidate it and send it out, and they're like, well, damn. Right? Maybe they put it back out, but and in Lyra, the Mage Dancer is honestly wild. And what I like about the Mage Dancer, I think it's like one of the most underappreciated cards in that deck. When I do that deck starter guide, I'm going to talk about it. But it gets massive, absolutely massive as a 2/1. It's crazy. And the cool thing about it is you can hold Intimidation, and they like do all these rolls, and they buff up the Mage Dancer. And then it's your last turn, you have 2 energy left, and you just intimidate it. It loses all its boost and just goes back to hand. And you're like, nice. All those rolls for nothing. And that's what Intimidation can do, that little reset there. Coniferal Cone Man, specifically the rare version, is good to send back because they often like boost it. It's usually a 4-costed 4/4/4 because it's the first one to come out. And the Daughter is specifically fantastic against Muna. Like, honestly, Intimidation destroys this deck because every time they play it down from the hand, you get a card draw. That's huge. If they play it from reserve, you don't. If they anchor it, you don't. But if they have to play it from the hand, which they want to do because its stats are incredible, you get a card draw. And when you send it back to the hand, if they're holding, they're like, damn, he drew a card and now I have to play this again? He's going to draw another card. Fantastic. Okay, so anyways, Intimidation, I think, is one of those cards that I feel like people underappreciate a little bit. I do think it's really, really good. Let's check out the live gameplay example. All right, we're in our game here, and we're against an Ortis player, and so I think early on we're going to get rid of Shenlong. It's just too expensive. It's going to rot in our hand. I'm going to get rid of Atlas as well for a very similar reason. I like the idea of Isun into Haven Trainee turn 1 to double advance. We also have Sun Wukong, which I think is good. The Spindle, while valuable, I don't know if we need it. And I'm not going to play it on turn 3. I'd rather have Sun Wukong here. I'd rather have an early presence. I think we have to beat them early and use Intimidations to send their landmarks back out. Well, their Ortis Carrier, of course. We're starting with Buddha here, so we're going to have a very aggressive start. We could probably go Haven Trainee on the left and see how they respond, because it's going to at least block them and borderline guarantee our advancement. But let's see what they play here. Okay, they're going to go Ortis Carrier, and this is where Intimidation becomes important to draw. So we're going to pass here. We're going to take the double advancement. They don't advance at all, but they're looking to obviously take advantage of their Ortis Carrier for future games. We're going to play a little aggressive. That is one of those things where, like, you give up 2 right at the start here, but obviously it's going to pay dividends moving forward. We just have to see if we can get rid of that Ortis Carrier. And it looks like we're not fortunate enough to draw into the intimidation, which is unfortunately, hopefully not at the bottom of our deck. Okay, we're to get rid of an Isun here. We don't even have the opportunity to advance on water on either location. We do have the Haven Trainee, which is kind of expensive here. I'm not sure if I love it. The problem is Isun doesn't help us in either location either, so we can't actually block off one of the Ortis recruits with either of the cards in our hand. We also have to be very careful of the Ortis Spy, which is going to get rid of the Haven Trainee. There's 3 of them in the deck, one including the rare. I think right now, this situation we're in, and that's exactly what I was concerned with, right? And that makes perfect sense that they would do that. It's likely that we lose in that location there. 3-3 across the board. We're going to go onto the left here. Very unlikely that they're able to do anything about the Sun Wukong, but let's see what they've got for us. It looks like they've passed. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. We're going to take the pass here. We're not able to win the right location at all, so let's just trade locations and hopefully draw an intimidation to get rid of this Ortis carrier, which is going to continuously cause problems for us if we don't have an answer for it. Now, we could go into an early Atlas, especially since they are going a little wide with the Ortis carrier. Haven Trainee is a good card. We do have our Sun Wukong there. Just thinking here. Haven Trainee overstated for the locations or the expeditions we're in. I'm going to put down the Haven Trainee here. This is a very tricky decision. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go Atlas left and see if they can answer it. It adds 5 power to the right, 3 power to the left. The only thing is that we could have gone Sun Wukong for 4 on this side and then 1 kind of Isun on the left here for 2 in water. That would use 2 cards. Would have had to have discarded something, which is, I guess, fine. But we'll have to see if they're able to answer here. So they are going to advance on the left side while also providing us a chance to advance on both because they're not able to gap the water yet. Let's see if they're able to play here. We are going to pass. And let's see if they have an additional play. Us advancing on either side here, I think, is advantageous to us because it's in our best favor to close out this game faster than them. And they are going to pass. So they are going to advance on the left. We're going to advance in both sides. And we're kind of closing in on a potential win condition here, especially if on turn 7, we're able to play the Atlas with a training grounds. So we're looking for training grounds in our hand. Now, we do have an ideal, so BRAVOS Pathfinder is ideal for this expedition here. The Haven Warrior is ideal for this expedition. So we have a great hand, honestly. If I'm going to get rid of one of them, I think it's going to be Isun, just because I like the way our hand's going to curve here. We also have 6 mana, which is a little awkward. But I think we can make it work. I think we get rid of Isun here. We're likely going to have to play the BRAVOS Pathfinder on the left, sorry. And then what we'll do is we'll play Sun Wukong on the right. Sun Wukong's not great on the right, but it does block their advancement in mountains very effectively. It just, we might not advance ourselves because he's a little weak, but he's well statted at the 4 cost from reserve. But he's just not attacking the expeditions that we want to enforce in water, but we will definitely put a massive barrier up for them in the mountains. So, and then hopefully if next turn we do draw into a training grounds, we'll have the combo for Atlas here. And I imagine they get rid of Atlas. Yes. Okay. So they get rid of the Atlas. They are advancing on the mountains here. Now what we're going to do is we actually end up in a really good spot here. Now Sun Wukong going into this expedition here, his stats are going to be very well suited to advance and block them. And so they're either going to have to like commit here or hope that I can't do anything on the left. The nice thing about the left is we have a very well statted BRAVOS Pathfinder. So I think we're in really good position here, honestly. Even if they charge, we'll be able to advance on the left side with the BRAVOS Pathfinder. So I like this position we're in. Okay. Okay. They go Kokoba, so they hard commit there. That's a lot of power there, and they're also going to be discarding a lot of cards come the next turn from their reserve. We're going to take the left expedition, and we're going to be happy with that. I think they committed a lot to win that right side there. I think assuming that I would not have the resources to win the left, and I do. So now we're 1 step away from winning the game. And this is the reserve situation they're in. They have to discard 2 cards from reserve. That's a massive amount of hand advantage given away. It's only a 7 mana game right now. They don't want to go in, like, they're not going to want to play top deck mode here. They're only going to have 2 in hand because they're going to have to play the 7th mana down. And they're kind of looking down the barrel of a problem, to say the least. And we got a great physical training with the draw card, which helps replenish our hand quite a bit. We're going to play down these cards. I think we're going to play down the Haven Bouncer. Although it's a little weaker than the Warrior, the Warrior is, I mean, the Warrior is so well statted for what we want to do. But I kind of want to get rid of this Kokoba, because the Kokoba represents a problem, especially with the carrier. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to get rid of one of the Haven Warriors here. I think physical training rare is too good to give up here. That draw card is very valuable for us. Like, we just top deck a Tracer or something like that, and it could potentially be a win condition. So I'm happy with, I'm not happy with it, but we will get rid of one of the Haven Warriors, despite the fact that with those Forest and Water Expeditions, they are perfectly statted for this situation. We are going to open up with a Haven Bouncer. We're going to get rid of Kokoba, because Kokoba represents an immediate issue for us. A 3-costed 5/5/5, given that the Ortis Carrier is on the board. So he's got to go. We're going to put the Haven Bouncer likely on the left, and then we'll have to respond with the Haven Warrior on the right. So Kokoba's gone here. Not necessarily on the right. We just respond with the Haven Warrior. That's pretty much all we need to do. We could also consider a physical training. Because we're in water, we could get another Issen. I've only put down 2 of them, I believe. So that could potentially throw us up on the right side. So, you know, we got some options here. So they are going to bring out the Ortis Spy from the reserve. That is a rare, so it's going to bring out a recruit as well. We are winning the left side here. They still have lots of mana available. Lots of choices to be had here. We just got to win one. We just got to win one. We are blocked on the left side here. Just thinking here, we got the Haven Bouncer. We don't have enough mana to do everything, right? That's kind of the challenge we're in. If we play the Haven Warrior, we are going to be in a situation where we're going to have to discard something, which kind of feels bad. But I think we're in a position where we could potentially win this game. And we have to respect the charge, right? So if we play into the left side, we're playing into their charge. So we want to play onto the right side. And I think we take the extra stats of Haven Warrior, even if it comes with a discard, because we want to push at least one of these sides here. It might be more difficult for them to respond here. They'd have to go wide, so they'd have to generate tokens and then charge is basically their winning hand with 2 cards. I suspect that losing the Kokoba was a big deal. Because even at 5 costs, like, you play a Jeanne d'Arc and it's too slow, right? Like, you just lose for them because it only procs at when she leaves the expedition zone, right? It's very hard to go, and they have to basically find 5 forest and 5 water with 5 energy with 2 in hand. I think they're probably holding a charge, which isn't going to be enough. And it looks like that they are going to be giving up here as we end our turn and ultimately take the win here. They played well, but ultimately I do think that our ability to attack very aggressively with Bravos was a big difference here. And of course, like, I think we managed our reserve well. I think we were able to do some disruption, despite the fact they disrupted our Atlas. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. I got another video for you right there if you're interested in seeing more starter deck content for Altered TCG. We'll see you on that next one.